In 1897, a French philosopher noticed something strange happening to himself as he aged and gave it a name almost nobody's heard of: Janet's Law. He believed a single year of your life is measured not in days, but as a fraction of every day you've lived so far. If he was right, it means your 10th birthday and your 40th birthday were never supposed to feel the same length. And the ratio only gets worse from here. Think about that for a second. To a 5-year-old, 1 year is 20% of their entire existence. To a 50-year-old, 1 year is 2%. Same 365 days. Completely different weight. Your first summer vacation felt infinite because it was infinite relative to everything you'd lived through so far. Last summer felt like nothing because by now it's almost nothing. But Janet's Law is just math. It explains the ratio. It doesn't explain what's actually happening inside your head to make that ratio felt. For that, you have to go looking somewhere stranger. In the early 2000s, neuroscientist David Eagleman ran an experiment that seems almost cruel. He recruited volunteers, then dropped them backwards from 150 feet into a net in free fall. While they fell, he asked them to read a flickering number on a wristband, a number flickering too fast for the human eye to normally catch, and they read it consistently. Under extreme fear, their brains processed information faster than physically possible in a calm state. Here's the part that matters. Afterward, every single volunteer overestimated how long the fall had taken, not by a little, by nearly a third. Eagleman's conclusion wasn't that time slowed down, it was that their brains, flooded with adrenaline, had laid down an unusually dense track of memory, more detail per second, and when your brain plays back a memory, it estimates duration by how much information is packed into it, not by the clock, by the density. This is the mechanism, not a metaphor, an actual mechanism. Your sense of how long something took is a reconstruction, built after the fact, from how much your brain bothered to record. So what does that mean for a 5-year-old versus a 50-year-old? Neither one falling out of a plane, just living an ordinary year. At 5, almost everything is new. New words, new faces, new smells, a new bike, a new fear of the dark, a new best friend. Your brain is a machine built for one job: encode, encode, encode. Every day arrives with no template to compare it to, so every day gets filed away in high resolution. That's why childhood summers feel like they last forever. They're not lasting longer. They're being recorded thicker. By 50, you've already built the templates. You know what a Tuesday is. You know what your commute looks like, what your kitchen sounds like at 7 a.m., what your coworkers are going to say in the meeting before they say it. Your brain, extremely efficient and not at all sentimental, looks at all of that and makes a decision. This is not worth full resolution. File it thin. Move on. And here's the cruel part. It's not just that new experiences get recorded richer. It's that once your brain decides a category of experience is known, it starts compressing everything that resembles it automatically, without asking you. Psychologists call this the forward telescoping effect. Familiar events don't just feel shorter while they're happening, they get retroactively shrunk every time you retrieve the memory afterward. Each time you remember last Tuesday, it gets a little smaller, a little more compressed, filed closer to every other Tuesday, until eventually you can't tell them apart at all. In 2005, psychologist Claudia Hammond described something she called the holiday paradox. A week on vacation, somewhere completely new, feels like it flies by while you're living it. But when you look back on it weeks later, it feels enormous, far longer than a normal week at home. The opposite happens with routine. A month of ordinary life passes quickly and is remembered as almost nothing. A blur, barely distinguishable from the month before it. Novelty stretches time twice, once in the moment and once again in memory. Routine compresses it twice, the same way. This is why people who deliberately break routine, who travel, who move cities, who take up something difficult and new in their 40s or 60s, report something remarkable. Their years start to feel longer again, not because the calendar changed, because their brain started filing thick again. There's a darker version of this pattern too. In palliative care research, patients nearing the end of life are sometimes asked to describe how their sense of time has changed, a recurring answer. The years compressed into almost nothing, but the final weeks, the final days stretched enormous, almost unbearably slow, because suddenly, again, everything was new. Every conversation might be the last one. Every ordinary moment got flagged by the brain as worth full resolution, the way it hadn't been since childhood. The body was failing. The memory system, ancient and indifferent to that fact, was doing exactly what it was built to do, recording harder the moment things mattered again. So here's the uncomfortable reframe. It was never actually time speeding up. Time never moves differently. A year is a year, at 5 and at 95, on every clock that has ever existed. What changes is how much of it your brain decides is worth keeping. And what decides that isn't your age, it's your novelty. A 25-year-old stuck in an identical routine day after day will report years blurring together exactly the way a bored retiree does. A 70-year-old learning a language, moving to a new country, meeting 100 new people, their years stretch back out almost like being young again. Not because their biology reversed, because their encoding rate did, which means the thing that's been quietly stealing your years wasn't your birthday count. It was every day you let become identical to the one before it. Janet's math was right about the ratio, but he was describing a trap, not a sentence. A 10-year-old and a 40-year-old were never going to experience a year the same way by default. But by default is the operative phrase. Default is what happens when you stop introducing anything new. It's not inevitable. It's just what your brain does when you let it coast. So the fall isn't the free fall Eagleman studied, and it isn't the calendar Janet was describing. It's every Tuesday you let become a copy of the last one. Every year that felt shorter wasn't shorter, it was thinner, recorded in less detail by a brain that decided, somewhere without asking you, that nothing new was worth keeping. You don't get more time by wanting it. You get it back the way a 5-year-old always had it, one unfamiliar day at a time.